So again, my name is Joe Ferenczy, and I serve two roles in water resources. One is overall company-wide. So company is a market segment. I service the entire company throughout. So, you know, our various regions in Cleveland, Columbus, Detroit, Florida, and anywhere else that we can kind of expand our reach to is kind of my responsibility for our water resources business line. And it's certainly not all me, it's a team of folks. So I'll mention a few. Obviously, Scott Vera, who's one of our main board members. He's the executive on our water resources team. And then Aaron Lobis, some of whom you guys are under his division, you know, certainly is very impactful in there. And then we have a few others that are more dedicated on the stormwater side, in Loretta Snyder and Billy Onospherico. And those are, and John Michael Lemon. So those are kind of the key people that help us kind of organize the water resources market segment. So again, for those that don't know me, I sit in Cleveland. I'm on the 9th floor. I look through the list, and it's good. I don't know a lot of you, so that's good. Feel free to pop in my office when I'm there and say hi anytime. But I have about almost 30 years when you count. I was born in the industry, so to speak. My dad was a consultant. He was more on the transportation side. He was a consultant engineer, a highway engineer. And so I had the ability to work when I started in high school. So, but if you count my college years when I worked for he had a small ownership in a smaller consulting firm. I have just about 30 years of experience, and all of my years have been in consulting. And so, so it's definitely a different, you know, mindset. You know, the biggest difference between consulting and other professions in the engineering world is our primary objective is obviously to make money. You know, people are not going to come, you know, without a paycheck. So there's a little bit different spin in the consulting industry. But in order to do that, we have to please our clients, we have to bring work in, and we have to do excellent work. So there's all those things that go into that. So, but I started out in my career graduating through that, working up, and then graduated and started as a young engineer. And so I think an organization like this is great. We didn't have that. Now, I was a smaller firm, so we didn't necessarily have access to that. And I started most of my career doing site development work. So residential subdivisions in Northeast Ohio, and started doing that. And then I really started doing a lot of stormwater heavy projects. We had some big projects that involved big stormwater. And that's really where I found my passion, because I really love doing the stormwater aspects of the design. And so at some point in my career at this first firm that I started at, which was Adashi Chuni Lin, I decided I needed to move on to advance my career. The company was getting smaller, and it was a, you know, kind of almost a sole proprietorship. So I decided to move my career, and I moved to a URS, which, you know, for those that know something about the organization here, there's certainly others that came through URS. So, and that's really where I was able to really continue my career in water resources, and really started focusing on a lot of stormwater and water resources related projects. And that's really where my passion lies. And I think, you know, my recommendation for any of you guys is to find something that you're passionate about. I know we come to work and we do our work, and you look to get through a job and finish it, and that kind of helps keep the excitement. But I would also encourage you to find a market segment, whether it's sports, whether it's commercial, whether it's, you know, transportation, or some market, including water resources. We would, you know, to me, that's where, you know, you can really significantly advance in your career. So with that, I'm going to kind of go into the market segment of water resources and what it means and what that does. So let me go through. So what is water resources? Not everybody knows exactly what water resources is. So it's really water, or one water, when we talk about water resources. It used to be called water wastewater, but that annoyed me because it leaves out stormwater. So We do have water, we do have wastewater, we have stormwater, and then there's kind of these other projects that you'll see here. So water, you have water treatment as a primary, so all the infrastructure, all the plants that are related there is primary treatment. Then you have tanks and pump stations. That's secondary. So the treatment plants, at least in the Cleveland area, are close to the lake, and then they pump their water up there. There is a treatment plant out in Westlake as well, but they pump their water up to the tanks and the pump stations, and those are identified as secondary facilities or secondary treatment units. And then we have the distribution network, and that really comprises the main components of water. And we work in all three of these aspects. I would say not as much in water treatment because we don't have process within Osborn engineering. So we don't actually go in there and do the process side. And when I say process, that's all the treatment related functions of the treatment plant. So, but, there's, in doing the work and some of the outlying work, it's for some of those guys that work in facilities, there's a lot of work that comes out of that's ripe for us. Pumping water takes a ton of energy. So the amount of electrical infrastructure that's in a water treatment plant or in the secondary units is pretty unbelievable. It's definitely a plant in and of itself, and there is a ton of electrical work that's in there. And there's also a lot of mechanical and HVAC work. Once you start getting into the distribution mains, it probably is more relegated towards the civil realm. There might be some other structural aspects, and I left structural out of any of those facility related discussions, but those are there. Then from water, we also go to wastewater, and it's very similar. We have, you have water treatment as your primary, then you have tanks and pump stations as well as your secondary, and then you have kind of the collection system. So instead of distributing it, it's collecting it. And those would consist of sewers and storage tunnels. But wastewater is very similar to that. And we probably do a lot of work. The pictures there represent some of our work. So this first picture here to the top left is a picture of the Southerly demo project. It may not be a great project representation yet because we're currently under the design of that project, but we're looking to demo a lot of the areas around Southerly. There used to be a lot of buildings and related facilities that are now no longer needed, and they want to either repurpose or demo these facilities and then be able to reuse it so they can do plant expansions. And so we're really leading that effort, and that's primarily a facilities driven project. So that's that. The picture up on the top right shows a large valve as part of our Cleveland Water and our water mains project. These are large lines, so these are transmission mains. And you'll see these valves are awfully large associated with them. And we're replacing, we're in a part of a program that's replacing it. The picture below and to the left, that it shows us a tunnel boring machine. We're working on the shoreline tunnel. It's in design right now. This is a representative picture, not an actual picture from the job, but basically we're working on a project that's associated with a 24-inch or 24-foot diameter storage tunnel. So, the idea behind a combined sewer system, and for those that are in the Cleveland area, I'm sure you've heard of this, Detroit as well, Columbus as well. Florida, not so much. Florida is a little bit newer system. They really don't have it. They design their systems as separate systems. Originally, when they built sewers, they made them combined sewers. So it was stormwater and wastewater, and they essentially piped them right to the lake. And then they decided, once the population got enough, they decided to treat it. So you go through the combined sewer efforts. Now they go through these treatment plants. What happens is during a wet weather event or a storm, the plant is designed, and the collection system is designed for only so much capacity. And once it reaches that, it breaches, and you get combined sewer discharge into the lake. And that's when you'll see, when we get a lot of major rainfall events during the summer, you'll see the beach closings or the recommendations not to swim in Lake Erie. And it's unfortunate. And again, my passion lies with water. That's why I like water resources. It started out with stormwater, but when you realize that, your drinking water comes from, Lake Erie. A lot of recreational activity, fishing and boating that I enjoy comes from Lake Erie. So, all of these things go into to help maintain probably our by far in Northeast Ohio, our most precious resource, which is the lake. And so I was born in an era where the lake was, and the rivers around here were terrible. And we've come a long way, but there's still a lot more to go, in order to restore our lakes and our rivers, especially in the Midwest here, and especially the Great Lakes. So, but then, so that's water and wastewater, and that's what we used to call the market segment. And so we decided that it wasn't enough, because water and wastewater only represent a portion. There's also stormwater. And so that's why we, changed a lot of the dynamics from water, wastewater to stormwater, and or to water resources. And you'll still hear people call it water, wastewater. But obviously that's, you've got streams, rivers, and creeks that we do work on. We do work on dams and detention basins, and then there's storm sewers and the collection systems associated with that. And then there's some, unique projects like green infrastructure and stormwater management. Representative projects are the Dover Ditch Stream Restoration Project. We added about 10 million gallons of storage, and you could see the picture there. It's the bottom to the left. That's an aerial photo of the basin completed. And you could see the stream that was, route around that was lengthened. That improves water quality. And then it's hard to get a depth perception, but there's 10 million gallons of storage associated with that. So that project was a big excavation project. And then what that enabled to do is certain downstream people were flooded in certain events, and this enabled them to get out of that floodplain or change the dynamics of the floodplain in there. So we do that. And then we have other projects that we get to in water resources, just because they don't necessarily have a great home, but but we do waterway projects. So work for our ports would be considered water resources based work, and the port is one of our primary clients. And I'll go through that here in a minute. The picture on the bottom right is a picture from Public Square. I lived that project for 3 years, and that is about as much utility infrastructure as you're ever going to see. They actually had to maintain that while reconstructing Public Square. So, but those are kind of the projects and the areas that we get into. So, let me go to the next slide. So then, and when I say market segments, I think I want to make sure that everybody understands that we have services here that we do. So if you're a civil or a mechanical or electrical or fire protection, to me, that's a service description of what you do. It's not necessarily a market, because a lot of our markets overlap. So water resources, although a lot of the work is civil engineering, there's also, we get into transportation work that our transportation folks do, and bridges and culverts and stuff like that, as well as a lot of structural work. And then a lot of MEP, fire protection facilities. We've even done a lot of technology. And then as well, a lot in the plant work that we do is derives architecture. So we do run the full gamut. Not every market segment does that, but you'll find more often than not, most market segments contain at least 3 or 4 of these services that we're talking about within Osborn, and how we define a market sector versus a service. So hopefully that's clear. I did want to just go over that, and sorry if I'm, feel free to interrupt if I'm going over stuff that you guys have already covered. And then what I thought would be helpful is some of our contract types that we work on and market in water resources more. A lot of ours are task orders or general engineering service type contracts, so a significant portion of it. We do work on a lot of standard projects where it's design, bid, and then build. However, we do have a lot of projects that are design build. So, these are different delivery methods. So we can work anywhere from an agency like the sewer district, and we'll go over some of our prime clients here shortly, but a lot of these we do work with other consultants, as you'll see. We do work with a lot of contractors on design build, and we do a lot of work with, directly for the main agencies as well. So we do get into a host of different contractual situations where we're not necessarily the prime consultant either. So, and then the last one is the integrated project delivery. That's kind of fairly new, but there are projects in water resources that we worked on that are associated with integrated project delivery. So these are some of our representative. These are our prime clients. So this is where a lot of the work is derived. Our market segments around here are, this was born out of Cleveland. So right now it's heavily Cleveland centric. Our goal is to really, and where we feel like the best opportunity for us to continue to grow in water resources is to expand our geographies. So, and you could see at the bottom here, we have started to do and break into a lot of different geographies. It just takes a little bit of time, but Cleveland Water, you guys might be surprised to know, but probably the last 3 years, that's our largest client in the entire company by a pretty reasonable measure too. So I think you might be surprised to hear that. Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District is obviously also another big client. Water pollution control, so the difference between the sewer district and water pollution control, combined, they own both the treatment plants, secondary facilities, and the collection system, but water pollution control really owns more of the collection system, and they're an agency out of the city of Cleveland. And so they own all the sewers that are smaller, where the district owns some of the regional interceptors, and anything associated with a combined sewer overflow is under the district's control. So, but as a whole, so some other clients we go after are one integrated wastewater district, and even other clients like Columbus on the bottom, they actually own and operate both water and wastewater under one agency. What happened in the city of Cleveland in the 70s, some of the people in the suburbs were concerned that the city of Cleveland was going to control lots of things in sewer and water. And so they were able to get the sewer district to become a municipal agency that's represented. So the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District is actually a board governs that body. It's not a city-owned facility. It's a separate municipally owned asset. But there's a board representation. I think there's 3 members from the city of Cleveland and then 4 from the suburbs. So that's kind of how the mix is. Don't quote me on those exact numbers, but that's kind of the idea behind the regional sewer district is it's a body that's comprised of not just city of Cleveland members, but members across their entire region. So the next client that we service is on here is the Cleveland Cuyahoga County Port Authority. They're right down here. We do have one of an extremely growing port, and we get a lot of shipments in, and they're doing a lot of work. Some of our larger projects, as you'll see, go through that. Other historical clients, Lake County Department of Utilities, so we get into county agencies as well. Great Lakes Water Authority, which is up in the Detroit market, that's a combined water and wastewater agency, so they control both. And they're a very large organization. The volume of work that's coming out of Detroit in that area is significant. Probably starting 10 years ago, Detroit was going, maybe even longer, Detroit was going through a bankruptcy, and the actual city itself, and they had issues and they put literally everything on hold. That's why for a while, some consultants actually moved down here, or a lot of talent moved down here from Detroit into the Cleveland market, just because they literally ceased all work. And so over the course of kind of being stagnant for 8 years, that work has really built up, and they have an enormous amount of not only just deferred maintenance work, but also capital projects now once they went through their bankruptcy. So that's an emerging client for us, and really something that we're looking to kind of grow and expand in the Detroit market. We are doing some active work for them as well. And then the last one is the city of Columbus, again, a combined agency of both the district and Cleveland Water, situated in Columbus. Columbus, probably from a city-centric standpoint, was a little bit smarter. They fought some of the rural agencies a lot harder to maintain their own water systems. And that's why Columbus is growing, not only because people are moving into the city, but it's also expanding geographically where Cleveland doesn't. So that's a significant difference between some of the growth statistics between Columbus and Cleveland too. And it really stems around water. Water service was a big part of that. If you want to get Columbus water, you have to annex yourself. So those are some of our market sector clients and stuff that we service. So, but like I said before, a lot of our projects that we'll go through, we necessarily don't work directly for these agencies. In some cases we do, and in other cases we may work for another consultant as a sub to them for some of these projects. But we obviously look to service these clients because this is where the main work comes from. And even when we do work through another consultant, we still identify these as our project owners. So does anybody have any questions? Anything they want to ask right now?
I think you're doing good so far, Joe.
Okay. Let me know if anybody has anything. I'm happy to stop. So just to talk about some of our representative projects. So Cleveland Water, the water mains project, this is really housed mostly and predominantly in the civil group up, so up on 9 is where a lot of this work is outputted from. And over the years, this contract is almost a little bit over $8 million. So in about a 6-year time frame, the contract size on this was $8 million. So combined, it would certainly be historically probably our largest contract within Osborn historically. So just to give you guys an idea of some of the size of our projects. And then I listed Cycle H here. We have many others, but Cycle H I thought was a great representative project. We're doing a lot of work, so structural, civil, electrical. We might be doing other services in terms of fire protection and mechanical. I'm not exactly sure, but it's very small on those on those ends. But that's that project is almost $1 million, a $1.2 million fee for Osborn Engineering. NERSD Southerly Demo. I'm sure some of you on the phone are actively involved in this project, but, oh, and I forgot the picture up to the top, that kind of represents and shows you all of our work on the water mains program. And so throughout the city of Cleveland, this is where we've worked on their water mains and replaced their water mains. So the picture in the middle there is representative of Southerly Demo. And so this is a aerial shot of the Southerly Demo, or the Southerly wastewater treatment plant. I think Southerly is one of the top 10 or 15 treatment plants in the country in terms of size of how much it treats. So for those that don't know where Southerly is, it's right off of 77. just north of 480. You can't miss it. You can smell it on good days out there. And for those that are in the industry, you know, that there's a lot of money to be had at treatment plants. So there's a lot of gold in poop. So that's the way we look at that. So that is, but this is a big project. I want to say it's almost a $3 million fee for us. NERSD, the debris racks and Brookside Culvert, I listed those because those are a stormwater function. And so we're excited to work with that. The sewer district actually manages two separate programs. They have a wastewater and then a stormwater component. So for those that live within their service area, you'll actually get separate. It might be a combined bill, but there's separate listings for stormwater and wastewater. And so, you know, stormwater is certainly an emerging practice. It's one that I started with early in my career when I was at URS. I actually helped the district get the program off the ground. And then when I made a transition between URS and Osborn, it was, the program kind of went on hold because it was tied up in the court system. And probably about 3 years ago, the courts ruled in their favor. And so they were unable to enact stormwater as a utility here in the Cleveland area. So it's essentially a separate utility, but that's why I list those projects, because it's great that we're expanding into that particular sub-market, I'll say, into the sewer district. And then we have the Port Authority. Most of the people here might have heard of a project, Irishtown Bend. It's probably one of our single largest contracts right now on a particular project. It's about a $4 million contract. It'll probably has a potential to grow up to about 5 if we get into construction on that. On the bottom right shows a picture of the work. It's right at the Detroit and West 25th, so right on the edge of the Cuyahoga River. If you've ever seen the hillside there, it's failing and it's falling in, and they're worried about it actually collapsing and pinching off the shipping channel in the Cuyahoga River there. To give you an idea, there's a building up top with a parking lot, and the parking lot, there's a grade differential between two parking lots on this existing building that's about 8 feet. Well, in the 60s when they built it, they were basically the same elevation. And then since the 1960s, the hillside has fallen so much that now there's an 8-foot differential, and it's like a line. They call them a scarp line. It's a line, and there's actually an 8-foot vertical difference between it. And it's right over here. The pink lines on here represent proposed contours, and you could see some of these buildings, but the parking lot that I'm talking about is here, and it's a massive differential existing. And so our work is to kind of shore this area up. So we're going to be adding a massive bulkhead here. Probably bulkhead walls bigger than any that have been built in Cleveland or even in the Great Lakes, because you're resisting massive forces because this hillside slope is falling. So we're putting in a bulkhead, but in order to even further stabilize the slope, we're going to cut out about 300,000 cubic yards of material here, and that's what this plan represents, one portion of the grading associated with it. So, so that's a really interesting project and one that I'd probably work on more. I manage that project personally, so that's my project. And then GLWA, we have a TOES contract, a funny name, but it's Task Order Engineering Services. So that's where a lot of acronyms in our business. So, but TOES does stand for Task Order Engineering Services. And then City of Columbus, we had the Varsity Lane Waterline Replacement Project. I know Sarah was on the phone, or I at least saw her, and she was, I think she's going to be part of the project. It got put on hold, but it was a significant win because it was our first win with the Columbus utilities working for that agency in specific. So those are just some of our representative projects. And then wanted to get into a few statistics in terms of market size, just so you get a feel for our market, because we're very different than some of the other business lines. So our project sizes range from $50 million projects, construction value, to $1 million projects, which means design fees swing from like $4 million to $100,000 is our typical. There are certain projects that are smaller, but for the most part, our projects are in this range here within water resources. Our sales goal for this year in 2020 was $7.5 million, so representing about 20% of the company, I think, which is pretty large. Outside of commercial, it was the largest market segment, and I think last year in 2019, it was the largest in terms of sales market segment. Now, conversely, the sales numbers can be a little bit misleading. A lot of the sales numbers also translate into fees for other consultants. So the work that's derived from ours in that $7.5 million, I would say a good $2.5 to $3 million go to other consultants. And you'll see this as we go through, but again, still pretty significant. And a lot of our other market segments, which is what you're seeing up here, also have that, some more or less, but we're probably the largest in terms of how much work we end up giving away. And that just has to do with our projects require a lot of teaming effort. So we do a lot of different consultants, and it seems like that's the wave of the future, is working with other consultants. It gives a lot of our clients a way of spreading around work in one fell swoop. So rather than having to go through 8 different contracts to get 8 different companies involved, it's one contract and you get 8 companies involved, and we get paid to manage that. So, but again, so that's our sales goal. Where we're at right now, I think this was, as of through May, we're at about $4.5 million worth of sales. So we're actually having a really good year. We're already through our $7.5 million. So the next bullet point, what we target and watch is not only sales, but also designations. So a lot of times what designations are projects that have been awarded to us, but we haven't actually contracted yet. And so for 2020, we already have $3 million in designations. So as long as these designations go through, we're already going to hit our sales goal, which is great. And that's good news for us. And then not only that, but when we worked on certain projects, we kind of pushed the bookings back. So we already have designations of $3.5 million in 2021. So we actually have a total of almost $7 million in designations, but we kind of divided them between 2020 and 21. Obviously still a little bit of risk because the projects might not go on there. I would say this, through the whole pandemic, I haven't heard of any of our projects being stalled or delayed at this point, especially associated with the pandemic. And that's because a lot of our agencies are public. But I would say a concern that I have, or what keeps me up, is what is the future? Certainly it's going to have an impact. If it had impact on the businesses, it just doesn't happen to us up front. But I think in the long run, some of our major clients are going to have a downturn or a downtick in revenue, and that's going to obviously impact our bottom line at some point. But we work hard to maintain what we've got, and right now we're seeing a continued stream of business and a lot of work coming. It's just, the uncertainty is more in the future. So beyond 2021, what does it look like? And again, a lot of our look on this, so when you look at different business lines, it's hard to compare and contrast these statistics associated with some of the sales. Our projects are big. So what I would tell you is, it's not like we're going to all of a sudden have a significant impact that we're going to be twice, because we're roughly halfway through the year, are we going to double our sales goal? No, likely not. Most of our projects that we're after, take even 6 months just to unfold. So we track our projects pretty significant versus like if you go to commercial, the commercial market segment, they'll get a call one day and say, hey, an architect will say, hey, I need a proposal for this project. And, those things come in a lot more on a short-term basis, whereas most of the water resources, most of our stuff is more long-term. So I would doubt we're going to see many new major projects come through this year, because that's how long it does take for some of this stuff to go through. We talked about the geographies that we're in and where we want to be. We're not in Florida yet, but certainly since we have a presence there, it's our next logical place to try to start winning work. So, we're still emerging in Detroit and Columbus. In Cleveland and in Akron, we're very well known in the industry. And get a lot of work throughout there. And then I did want to put some of the development requirements, and this goes into, some of our sales, but we have a high proposal cost. It's not unusual for us to spend $35,000 on a proposal. Now that would include, what that mostly includes is time. So my time, or we actually, for our proposals, a lot of times we have to go out and actually do some of the design and develop an approach, not a scope of work, but an approach. And to do that, you really have to start jumping into the design and how you would identify what the opportunities and constraints are. And these proposals generally take a significant volume of effort, not only on our end technically, but also we need a reasonable amount of support from marketing, putting together resumes and qualifications and stuff like that. So like I said, it wouldn't be unusual for us to spend $35,000 on a proposal for a large water resources pursuit. Conversely, that's why we're a little bit more picky in terms of what we do or don't chase. And some of that isn't in every pursuit. If we're on a team and we're a sub-consultant, certainly we wouldn't anticipate spending as much. We will dedicate some resources though, but it's kind of allocated based on the job size and what our potential revenue would be when we book that job. A lot of our proposals, and as the selection process goes, you submit the proposal, it's shortlisted, and then you go to interviews. So we also do a lot of interviews within our work and our proposal, where we have to go in there and compete against, the top 2 or 3 teams. So, and then there's a lot that goes into the proposal setup. So, if I see a proposal on the street and we don't know anything about it, our chances of winning that might be 5%, even if it's perfect for us, even if it aligns perfectly with our resources and what we do. It doesn't always, it very rarely translate, that information rarely translates in. So it's important that we talk to our clients. So that's why, for some of the staff that work with me, I think they probably wonder where or what I do half the time, but I do try to make a concerted effort to stay in touch with a lot of our clients and understand what's going on in the future and what their concerns are for these proposals coming up. So, so there's a lot of proposal setup time associated with these. So, and it's a continuous cycle. Projects we lose, we do a lot of debriefs. We want to understand, if we're going to make a $35,000 effort on the next one, we want to make sure that we're not making the same mistakes and we're putting ourselves in a position to win. So, so that's kind of unique to our market. I would say the next closest one to that would be either content media or healthcare, maybe O sports as well. And again, generalizing it across. I'm sure there's one-offs within each market segments where we stand to invest a lot of proposal time and upfront business development time. But and then,
Hey, Joe, can you talk a little bit about how we build and keep these relationships, say with like Cleveland Water or any of the other kind of major clients that we have? What kind of sets us apart from other firms that are like us?
so what I would say, and I don't know that this is different than any other firms, it's really a relationship based. So, but what I would say to the young professionals is it's layered. You know, a lot of our clients, what's interesting in water resources is on the ownership side. So people that work for Cleveland Water, there's engineering counterparts that are very similar. There's, you know, people at a manager and director and commissioner level on the owner side, but they also have a staff that works for them. And so, you know, I would say that that is a great opportunity for you guys to continue to start establishing some of your relationships. And that's not to say that you can't have a relationship with a commissioner or whatever else, but generally I think, you know, peer-to-peer is probably a little bit more relatable when I say that. So, but knowing and maintaining those relationships, talking to them and understanding what their issues are very important. And that's a lot of when I put that blurb in there about proposal setup time, that's really where we spend a good amount of our energy going in and meeting, you know, for when I do a proposal for the district or Cleveland Water, if I haven't met 2 or 3 times with them, I'm very anxious about our chances of winning because we really don't know enough about the project, you know, because basically we're judged on a, you know, basically the way that our proposals are judged by a team of people on that side. So, but for the young professionals group, it's a great way to maintain relationships or not maintain, but build relationships. So as you're working on some of these projects, you're going to be exposed to client and client staff, and to maintain those, whether it be, and I'll get to the, later on in my presentation, I do talk about some agencies that kind of really work a lot and where you'll get a lot of good interaction with clientele. I talk about that a little later, but through those two as well are great ways. And it doesn't have to be like on a daily basis, but I think it, you know, it helps and it's good. And, you know, the other thing is, you know, being a technical person and as a young person is good because there's a lot of different skill sets that go into this work that we do in water resources, and having a technical background helps establish those relationships, and getting to the point where you're, you know, a technical expert in somewhere also helps build those relationships to the point where those clients come out and seek you. So, you know, when I was helping the sewer district start their program, they were coming to me in it. So it was a lot easier. Now, since then, and that's kind of changed in terms of the client has really hired a ton of consultants. So they really haven't done that lately, but having that technical background for me really helps. So it's not always about a particular relationship too. Sometimes it's establishing, it's a little bit of both. It's having that relationship, but it's also having the expertise and knowledge where they want to call you to reach out to you.
So inviting staff members that we would email or interact with for different projects to say like a Beers for Peers or any of the networking events, when we are able to do those again, those would definitely be a good move, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Any kind of interaction with them that you can do beyond that, outside of work, is always great. It provides, you know, it provides a personal level of service. And in the end, ultimately, as a consultant, we're a service provider. We're in the service industry. So, you know, outside of, you know, beyond making money is our primary goal as a consultant business. you know, satisfying our clients is probably the number one goal out of the company outside of making money, right? So, but establishing those, you know, because what I could tell you is having those relationships helps because, you know, I have a relationship with somebody where they would call me and say, hey, I know you guys are doing this project, but it's not going in the right direction, Joe. You know, can you help us? You know, those kind of phone calls are critical. And, you know, sometimes they're not fun because, you know, there's an issue that somebody's trying to resolve, and we all tend to try to, you know, we're engineers, so we want to resolve our own problems. But having those relationships as somebody that's a manager, that I certainly on a day-to-day basis couldn't get into every project that we do and understand those dynamics, but knowing that they would call me if there's an issue, or have called me in the past where there's an issue and I can help straighten it out is pretty important. And so, you know, these are guys that I've worked with, you know, when I was younger in my career. So, you know, establishing that and working their way up, you know, I mean, the great thing about, you know, these agencies is there's a lot of mirror of what you have in a consulting business. You have people at the top, in the middle, and at the bottom, and they have a lot of staff associated with that, you know, you can kind of mingle and grow. So you start on the bottom and work your way up to middle and then top. So did that answer your question? So that was a long answer to yes. Any kind of interaction with them is great.
Yeah, that definitely helped. I mean, that's something for everyone to keep in mind as we go about our day-to-day interactions with various levels of the clients. And
But again, I wouldn't just leave those to that. And the important point too is working with them on a project. Nothing, you know, it's really great when you work with them on a project and can relate to them on that level. There's a level of trust and understanding, and a point of kind of, you know, you guys were kind of through the battle together, so to speak, I guess is the best analogy, you know, if you're working with them on a technical level. And then, you know, it's reinforced with, you know, some of the organizational events, and we'll get to that. Okay.
good to go.
I just wanted to give you guys an understanding of some of our projects. So to the top right, this is our team on Irishtown Bend. So it may be a $4 million project, but I have 2 geotechnical consultants. I have a consultant that's an expert out of New York, and then one that's here, that's our local geotech. We have a bulkhead specialist in Kretsch Ojard. We have Brown and Caldwell on our team to help rehab a sewer that's failing within that slope. And then we have a permitting specialist because there's federal funds involved, and the permitting work associated with that is pretty sophisticated in terms of getting into NEPA, or the National Environmental Policy Act. So there's a lot of permitting requirements. And then we have about a half a dozen more smaller sub-consultants on the team. So a lot of our teams they're big teams, you know, and we do lots of major goals. So I always like this from Irishtown Bend. Because, you know, we wanted to protect the shipping channel. So this is the Cuyahoga River, and off to the left in this major goals is you could see this barge coming through the shipping channel. And so there's a sewer that's collapsing that's underneath here that the sewer district is participating in. The city wants to end up with a park on this Irishtown Bend project. And so we're not only working with the city of Cleveland, we're working with the Metro Parks, NOACA, Ohio City, the city of Cleveland, as I said, Land Studio, who's somebody that I worked with at Public Square, and then our prime client, which is the port. And all of these are stakeholders. And so, you know, working your way through, it's maddening at the end of the day to work with all these clients, because they all have different agendas and goals. And as the prime consultant, I'm trying to manage my way in a stepped process. So not all of these agencies have the same stake in the project, so you have to weigh that, but it's the interaction and the ability to make them all happy. And, you know, that's just something that gets resolved over time. That's a timed process. But to me, that's why I love a project like that, is I get to work with all these different agencies. And I forgot to mention the metro parks in here. This is that picture of that parking lot. You can see this was probably taken in the mid 2000s. Since then, they actually had to put a guardrail up here. If you go out there, it's front steps. So if you go out there, there's actually a guardrail. And the parking lot down here is literally like 8 feet lower. So that just tells you how much that whole hillside is moving. So you know, those are kind of the complexities of the project. And then these are some of the things that we go through in the proposal effort. In the top left, this was not a winning proposal, but we did well. It was for the sewer district, but we actually had to go through a full design. And some of these are the graphics that we represent. This was, so this one was the top one where we were looking at options to how to expand a basin. So when we write our proposals, it's really giving the client a blueprint of some potential alternatives, some great alternatives that would translate into cost savings or lowering risk or whatever benefits are. That's why they take a long time to put together from a technical standpoint, because you have to go through the design process. And then after you've done it from a design process, you have to translate that into a proposal that's a written document with graphics. And so that's where a lot of our technical time, or all the technical time, not all, but a lot of the technical time comes in. And, you know, evaluating these, we had to run models and everything else that's associated with this to get some of these results in here. And so it's different than some of our other market segments where we get selected either based on price or quals or, you know, stuff like that. And that's not to say that quals doesn't go into our selection, or price in some regards, but a lot of our proposal efforts are more built on the technical approach and how we, you know, kind of can convince the agency that we're the best team, because this is where you can really differentiate yourself from your competition. This next one was a project that we just did. We were a sub on this, but we had to evaluate. The Westerly wastewater treatment plant generates sludge. Right now they burn it, and so they incinerate it, but they're gonna have to spend a significant amount of money to upgrade the incinerator. So they just upgraded their incinerators at Southerly. And as it happens, there's not enough sludge to process at Southerly, that it's not running as efficiently. So it needs more sludge. So they're looking at a project, instead of incinerating it at the Westerly wastewater treatment plant, they want to pump it to Southerly. And to do that, they need a force main design. And so we were able to get on one of the lead teams that's going after this proposal. That just went in last Friday. And I think our fee just for Osborn on that one was close to $1 million. So, and then lastly, I know Abby talked about it, but, you know, where can you interact with some of these? These are some, organizations that I know our clients attend regularly, represent themselves, and where we can really also kind of target them from a different aspect. Not only that, but some projects, like I actually ended up, a lot of these organizations have conferences. Like the Ohio Stormwater Association has the annual conference. And so probably one of the greatest impacts is the ability to present a project with the client. So we were able to do that for Public Square on the Ohio Stormwater Association. I presented our design on Public Square for the stormwater with the regional sewer district at that. And a lot of these other organizations offer similar things, you know, whether it's American Society of Civil Engineers, they have probably a lot of local meetings. So they're a good organization. And And these are just a few. There's other ones, and these are more concentrated in water and wastewater industry. Maybe not the American Society of Civil Engineers, but I do know a lot of the district folks help organize and run that association. So these are all good ones to get involved in. OWEA, which is the Ohio Water Environmental Association. So a lot of treatment plant work. So, you know, for those that aren't civil engineers, these are other organizations that beyond civil engineering, some of them are. So the Water Environment Federation, it has an Ohio chapter. AWWA has an Ohio chapter that a lot of our clients are engaged in, whether it be Columbus or Cleveland. So, you know, getting involved in these organizations is really excellent because a couple of routes. One, like I said, you can present the project with a client, and there's nothing greater than that. You know, one, it kind of celebrates the success of the project, and two, you know, you're interacting and speaking and working and engaging with the client again. So, and then you're not only that, you're presenting it to other potential clients there. So there's nothing more powerful than seeing another client seeing a different client that you've worked with that's, you know, helping present a satisfied project. So with that, that's really kind of what I had in terms of that. I'm happy to open it up to questions in terms of whatever you guys want to know. Like I said, almost 30 years in the industry, so you can ask me any question. It doesn't have to be related to water resources either.
Hey Joe, Chris down there, quick question.
Sure, Chris.
Those debris racks, is that just to prevent like large branches and trees from like damaging structures downstream? Or is that to prevent them from getting out into the lake eventually? And do they just like do a routine maintenance to get all that stuff out or as needed?
So that particular project involves 7 different sites, and it's mostly to try to, there's ways to optimize some of the designs associated with debris racks. So when you think about how you clean and maintain debris that builds up in a stream, some of the debris racks can kind of push the debris on one side of the stream or on the other. They could be designed to do that. So it's improvements like that to help optimize maintenance, because we talked about the sewer district's program in terms of stormwater. 1/3 of the money they collect, which is which amounts to about $12 million or $15 million, goes to just maintenance of woody debris. So pulling out trees and logs, Chris. So yes, in a short answer, it's really to prevent. What happens is some of that woody debris, if it gets inside some of the larger storm infrastructure, some of the culverts and the pipes, it really becomes a problem, and it basically blocks those up for a long time, or they're really difficult to get in there and maintain it. So the idea is you put these debris racks in before they enter these culverts, and then you can come in and identify, and you have specific points of maintenance that their maintenance group can go to. So it's an interesting project. I would encourage you. Billiana is our lead. Is our lead on that. So talk to her. She knows a lot more about the details of that project. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for the info.
Sure. Anybody else have any other questions? Hopefully it was useful. We didn't identify a lot of definitions. So again, please ask questions.
To kind of build off what Joe was talking about at the end with the different organizations and stuff, in normal times, that YP calendar, I'm trying to find out when these organizations, the ASCE, the ASME, the IEEE, all those things are having events here in town. I typically keep up with the Cleveland 2030 group, who members are in their 20s and 30s, and they do a bunch of events around town. And it's not just engineering, so you can go out and meet people in accounting, lawyers, all sorts of things. Those events are really fun. The Cleveland 2030 district, which Osborn has some part in, they do a bunch of really fun events. They do tours around town of different places. So I've done one of the West Side Market. I've done one of the warehouse district. And then there's a happy hour afterwards. So you get to meet architects, different clients, different vendors and stuff at those typically. So those will typically be on the YP calendar again in normal time. So if anybody has any groups that they're involved with, please send me, those names or those links so I can get them on there and keep up to date, because that's what that calendar is meant for is, if you're looking for something to do or go out and you want to meet clients or something like that, or potential clients or people that could lead you to potential clients, it's always helpful. I've found out tons of different information just going to those and talking to people. I'm always down to go to those. I obviously love talking. So yeah, definitely. If you have anything like that, let us know, but those are great to do. And it's unfortunate we can't do them right now.
It'll change. I mean,
It will.
they're going to have to find a way to make it interactive in order for them to stay. So stay with it. We're in an unusual time at this point, but I can tell you they're integral to the profession,
Yeah,
being able
certainly.
to understand and doing a lessons learned. Sometimes they seem trivial, but these organizations are important. So
Yeah, I mean, there's been times where I've even just walked over to Masthead to grab a drink with the group or grab a drink with somebody, get some food, and I've seen events there and I've walked over and was like, hey, what are you doing? Keep your business cards on you. That's always helpful. Exchange business cards with people. You never know who you're going to find. I'm very active, or usually I'm very active on LinkedIn and connect with anybody I get a business card from just to keep up with what's going on. A lot of different people will post pictures and then you can strike up a conversation with them about what's going on. So that LinkedIn is a great way to look for and connect with people as well. So, all right. Well, if nobody has any further questions on anything, I think we can wrap things up. Yeah, good. So I believe our next meeting is scheduled for like the end of July. It will probably be a similar format to this. I'm still looking for a speaker for that meeting. So if anybody has any suggestions, if anybody's director or manager would be interested, definitely let me know. I'll share. I have a closing photo. But yeah, definitely keep us posted, and hopefully everybody stayed awake for our presentations, and it's good to virtually see everybody pop in. And as always, let me know if you have any questions, and like Joe said, his door is always open. So, all right guys, take care and look for an email from me later, and until next time.
Thank you.